I think we begin with the last line of page 406.
406, yes.
Good.
Okay. Once were my days like days of other men. To think and act was all, to enjoy and breathe.
Now, to think and act was all.
Huh. Okay.
In other
To
words, to
think,
think and act was everything.
hmm. To think and act was all, to enjoy and breathe. This was the width and height of mortal hope. Yet there came glimpses of a deeper self that lives behind life and makes her act its scene.
Well, I can tell you what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that when you are reading it ahead of time, you're getting the words,
Hmm.
but not the sense yet. And
Okay.
I think the sense is going to come when we go over it as we did the other day, and you read
Yeah.
it three times, and you
Yeah.
nailed it, and you nailed
Okay.
it.
Okay.
So, so it's interesting. But I'm hearing a good pronunciation of the words. I didn't like with too much. There's a D in there. With, with, with,
With
with.
with
Yes.
okay.
So he says here, and it's so true of all of us, unfortunately. Once his days were like the days of all of us.
Hmm.
Just basically, what do? We think and we act,
Hmm.
and then we enjoy and we breathe.
Hmm.
That's about it. This was the width and height of mortal hope.
Hmm.
Yet there did come glimpses of a deeper self.
Hmm.
Glimpses, he says, only glimpses.
Yeah.
A deeper self that lives behind life
Hmm.
and makes her act, that means life's act, the scene for this deeper self,
Hmm.
and makes her act its scene. So this deeper self makes our life and our acts its scene.
Hmm.
In other words, the scene of life is actually being created by this deeper self.
Hmm. Okay.
So he says there came those glimpses of a deeper self that lives behind life, and yet it still makes life. It makes the acts of life. It's seen,
Hmm.
and I think we all know that already. We know that because we're not living the simple animal life like the days of other men that
Hmm.
who people who just think and act and that's everything and they enjoy and they breathe
Hmm.
and that's the whole thing of their life, the whole width and height of their mortal hope.
Hmm.
I know. I mean, my parents were like that.
Hmm.
My father was a hedonist. He loved everything in life. He loved nature. He loved work. He loved everything, but there was nothing higher.
Hmm.
There was no
What
deeper.
was the word you used? Hedonist.
Yes, hedonist. Hedonist.
Okay.
It's a good word, huh? Good word.
Hmm.
You should know it.
Yeah.
It's we can look it up because um, it is a word that would define people, not in a negative sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you mean. It says a person who believes that the pursuit of pleasure is the most important thing in life, a pleasure seeker.
A flesh, did you say?
A
pleasure, pleasure.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
someone who's devoted to the practice and pursuit of pleasure,
Hmm.
definitely. And he loved. I mean, my father would call me. This is late in life when Mary Helen already was just getting the cancer, the diagnosis, and he would always want to come and spend 2 weeks with
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
And I had to take. He ran me ragged. He was in his mid 80s,
Hmm.
and he would say, "Oh, what's on the agenda for today? What's on the agenda for tomorrow? What's on the agenda?" And I would have to take him to hit baseballs at a batting cage or go to a particular event or go to a particular place. That was his hedonism. He just
Hmm.
loved this pursuit of this pleasure of
Hmm.
life. And
Hmm.
so and so this is so clear when we read this now the third or fourth time. Once were my days like days of other men.
Hmm.
To think and act was everything. To
Hmm.
enjoy, to enjoy is hedonism,
Hmm.
and breathe.
Hmm.
And this was the width and height of mortal hope. But
Hmm.
then he has a colon there, and that colon says, continue on a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Yet there came glimpses of a deeper self that lives behind life and makes life's act its scene.
Hmm.
Got it now?
Yeah.
Clear
Yeah.
now, huh? Good.
Clear. Yeah. Yeah.
So we
And
carry.
I think what you also made sense about the hedonism, because I think I know many people in my life, and I often, like, I think even just 2 3 days ago I was wondering about this, and it's so perfect timing that you're speaking up about this, because like you said, there is nothing above, or like nothing. You just showed a gesture. You didn't show, like, you didn't use words. I
Yeah.
think this together with these lines are really making sense, because I do believe that uh, the purpose of life is to experience joy, but with a deeper aspect to it. Like this line says, like, yet there came glimpses of a deeper self that lives behind life and makes her act its scene. So it is for the divine or the nature to bring out that act and experience the joy through us, rather than, like you mentioned, the external pleasure that we keep seeking. And I know many people who just, they say that, yeah, my I think my philosophy is to be happy and live life, but that's the fundamental difference, I think, from what I'm looking for and that pleasure that they are seeking.
It's very interesting that you say this because yesterday in my daily Savitri with Nilisha, she
Mm,
said to me, "You know, my friends are all writing to me, Narad, and they're
mm,
telling me how beautiful the Alps are in Switzerland, and they're traveling to Paris, and they're
mm,
traveling every place." And then and then something in me says to myself, "And you're here alone in this ashram." And she says, "And then I realize that I'm here for a higher goal,
mm,
and I don't have to travel to all these places, even though they may be so beautiful.
mm,
But I just don't need that pleasure of it because I've dedicated my life
mm,
to, to Mother and Sri Aurobindo."
mm.
So all three things have come together, you,
Yeah.
Nilisha, and these passages.
Yeah.
Now he'll carry on and he'll tell you what was going on in him.
A truth was felt that screened its shape from mind, a greatness working towards a hidden end, a vaguely
No,
and
and
vaguely and vaguely and vaguely through the forms of earth there looked something that life is not and yet must be.
good. Now let us notice that greatness is a capital G.
Yeah.
So Sri Aurobindo is making it the essential word here. A truth was felt
Hmm.
that screened its shape from mind. And very often it is mind, as Nolini says, that gets in the way
mm,
because it thinks it knows everything.
yeah,
And yet it only sees in duality.
mm,
It only sees love and hate,
mm,
truth and falsehood, good and bad.
mm,
Can't see the totality until we rise above mind, far
mm,
above, into the overmind, eventually into the supermind. But even in the beginning, we have the higher mind, we have the illumined mind, and then we have the intuitive mind. And all of these Sri Aurobindo has explained very clearly in his uh, books. Now,
mm,
so this truth was felt that screened, it's only screening its shape from mind.
mm,
A greatness, he feels even a greatness working towards a hidden end. And vaguely, he says, through the forms of earth, there looked something that life is not and yet must be. This is such an
mm,
interesting two lines here because what he is telling us here is that he he sees in the forms of earth. We can say it's people, it's
mhm,
nature, it's animals, all these different forms of earth. Vaguely, there looked something that life is not,
mm,
and yet it must be.
mm,
So he sees this, but he doesn't. He can't. He can't nail it. He can't place it. And why
mm.
can't he place it? The next line tells us.
I groped for the mystery with the lantern, thought, its glimmerings lighted with the abstract word, a half-visible ground, and travelling yard by yard, it mapped a system of self and God.
Well, he calls thought a lantern.
Yeah.
It's not a great light, is it?
Mm.
A lantern is a small light.
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
light. It can light you a little bit along the way, and it can actually light up a half visible ground, so that he could travel yard by yard. Uh, so its glimmerings lighted with the abstract word, a half visible ground. And traveling yard by yard, it mapped a system of the self and God. So
Mm.
this thought, which is which he's groping for, using to grope for the mystery, this lantern thought, he's groping, using it to grope for this mystery. And the light from that lantern, it lighted with the abstract word, something like a half visible ground. You can't really see it very clearly.
Mm.
And traveling yard by yard, because with a lantern you can only move yard by yard.
Mm.
You can't move great distances. There's not
Yeah.
that much light. And
Yeah.
traveling yard by yard, it mapped a system of the self and God. So he, because he's Satchivan,
Mm.
and again we want to see who Satchivan is.
Yes.
Satchivan is the divine mind, here
Mm.
fallen blind, losing its celestial kingdom of vision.
I
So
thought
I'm,
that
I'm
was
sorry. That's
Vimarsena.
Matsena. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Satchivan is the soul carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance. So it has the divine truth of being in itself, and
Mm.
that's what we're seeing here. That
Mm.
he's able to map a system of the self and God,
Mm.
but he's still descended into this body, into the ignorance.
Mm.
and into death. So then he says, I could not live.
I could not live the truth. Before moving on, Narad, I wanted to I just feel those lines. I was still like picking up as words, so I would just try to read it again.
Okay, sure.
I groped for the mystery with the lantern, thought. So is the pause correct? Like after lantern, I pause for a
Well,
short
yeah,
minute?
but it has to be a little bit different because thought and lantern do have to connect somehow.
Okay,
I groped for the mystery with the lantern thought.
okay. So the tonality is what it is changing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
I groped for the mystery with the lantern, thought, its glimmerings lighted with the abstract word, a half visible ground, and travelling yard by yard, it mapped a system of the self and God.
Yes, but you
I
said
could not
a
live.
half you said a half visible ground. You sort of cut it off. So the light is lighting this half visible ground, and then traveling yard by yard, it maps a system of the self and God. So they're tied together somehow. You can't drop the word.
Okay, a half visible ground and travelling yard by yard, it mapped a system of the self and God. I
Carry on.
I could not live the truth it spoke and taught. I turned to seize its form in visible things, hoping to fix its rule by mortal mind, imposed a narrow structure of word law upon the freedom of the infinite, a hard, firm skeleton of outward truth, a mental scheme of a mechanic power.
This is unfortunately very often what we see today
Mm,
in these speakers on the TED shows on YouTube who have very intelligent minds,
mm,
very intelligent,
mm,
but they cannot live the truth because it's beyond their reach.
mm,
So he could not live the truth that this system that he mapped of the self and God,
mm,
he could not live that truth that it spoke and thought. And therefore, he turned to seize its forms, invisible things, hoping to fix its rule by mortal mind. Now, I tried to see the divine in the flowers.
mm,
I tried to understand why Mother has given a certain significance to a certain flower.
mm,
It vibrates with that significance. Mentally, I can understand it,
mm,
but I haven't felt it as a living presence in my soul.
mm,
That's significance, not yet.
mm,
And so, although it grows and it gets clearer slowly, I'm still not there. So he turned and he tried to seize the form of God, uh, invisible things.
mm,
And he wanted to fix that rule by the mind, which is
mm,
impossible.
mm,
And in the human cycle, Sri Aurobindo explains this
mm,
so clearly.
mm,
And therefore, he imposed a narrow structure of world law, this is in his mind,
mm,
upon the freedom of the infinite. So, you know, very few can truly understand the infinite.
mm,
we we have a mental feeling of it, a mental image of it, but only when it opens to us completely.
mm,
It has done so for me when I met Mother and Sri
mm,
Aurobindo,
mm,
but rarely after that. In a few people, I could feel it, but for it to open uh, upon the freedom of the infinite is very difficult until we're into a much higher state of mind,
mm,
or even beyond mind. And that demands from us a lot of silence,
mm,
a great peace,
mm,
a tremendous influx of divine love, which is beyond desire and need and reciprocation. So he was trying to do that and he couldn't do it. So now he carries on.
yeah.
The
This
heart,
light,
uh, the
this light
mental,
showed
yeah,
me,
this,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This light showed me more the
No,
dark.
no, this light showed more the
This
dark.
light, this light showed more the darknesses unsearched.
Good.
It made the original secrecy more occult. It could not analyze its cosmic veil or glimpse the wonder worker's hidden hand and trace the pattern of his magic plans.
Hmm. You were there Sunday for the talk or
No,
not?
no, now
Okay.
I'm not. I'm doing the Savitri painting
Oh, yeah,
classes.
you're right.
Yeah.
So on Sunday, I discussed this idea of the occult
Hmm.
because the occult is, Sri Aurobindo says about the occult that it's something that is not really important in India,
Hmm.
in the West.
Hmm.
In India, we understand that it's something that's a little bit hidden, but we can penetrate it.
Hmm.
We can understand it. In the West, it's something totally different.
Hmm.
So, he says that this light showed more. The darkness is unsearched. Well, if we think about a lantern giving that little area of light, it shows more the darknesses.
Hmm.
It's just a little light it's showing. It's more
Yeah.
the darknesses that are all around it.
Yeah.
Okay, so and his mind now he's saying it made the original secrecy even more hidden, more occult. It
Hmm.
could not analyze its cosmic veil or glimpse the wonder worker's hidden hand and trace the pattern of his magic plans. So this is basically all about the mind and his attempt to understand the divine through
Yeah.
the through the
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he changes things.
So, should we stop here and I read the whole thing again?